Welcome to Straight Line MTB, and today we're doing a fork comparison that nobody's really asked for, but you definitely should. Welcome back to Straight Line MTB, and today we're going to be talking about the RockShox Zeb Ultimate and the Manitou Mezzer Pro. So our Commencal Almeida 2.9 all mountain came stock with the RockShox Zeb Ultimate, and from our Nuke Proof Mega 290 we had the Manitou Mezzer Pro 180mm fork laying around. So since I had a bit of time on the RockShox Zeb, I thought what a better opportunity than to try out the Manitou Mezzer on this bike and see how it stacks up. If you haven't checked out our first ride review of the Commencal Almeida, go to our channel and check it out. But that bike came stock with the RockShox Zeb Ultimate fork. This is a new fork for 2021 for RockShox, aimed at those big, hard enduro downhill charging bikes. This is a 38mm stanchion fork, so it is a big, beefy boy. It has the brand new Charger damper, the 2.1. It has a high and low speed compression adjustment as well as rebound. One thing I really appreciate about this fork is the post mounts are 200mm, so they accept those big rotors without having a pain in the butt adapter. It does accept a bolt-on fender that RockShox makes. Unfortunately, it's out of stock or they're behind production, so we're unable to get one. But I do like the ability to bolt it on so you don't have to mess with any of those zip ties or any of that craziness. It's got the Debonair air spring. This fork is adjustable, I believe, 160 to 180. So it does have some adjustment for bigger or lower. We're right here in the middle. So this is a fork I was excited to try. I don't think I would ever really have looked at the real beefy forks, as I don't really notice a lot of flex on other forks. So it was really nice to be able to get the opportunity to try it. All right, friends, so now let's talk about the unique yet beautiful Manitou Mezzer Pro. So you may be saying to yourself, Manitou or Manitou? Yeah, Manitou Mezzer Pro. So I've ridden several items from Manitou and I've really appreciated their performance, really well thought out, and they do things a little bit differently. This fork came out in 2019, and at the time it was the big beef of the scene because it was a 37mm stanchion. It one-upped everybody by 1mm. It's aimed at the same crowd, the enduro hard-hitting crowd. This fork has high and low speed adjustment as well as rebound adjustment, but what Manitou does a little bit differently is they have their IRT, which is the infinite rate tune adjustment. And so what that does is it adjusts the progressivity of the top out, the last 10mm or so, and then as well as you can tune the mid stroke to make it softer or harder. This fork comes with their hex lock axle system, so you push it in and it threads in from the other side. This fork came in at 2,040 grams, so about 200 grams less than our RockShox Zeb, which was instantly noticeable on the trail because it felt a little bit lighter. So you're about a half a pound lighter than the competition in the same category. So being a set it and forget it type of rider, I will go off factory recommendations for PSI. So RockShox recommends for me at about 205 pounds to run 76 PSI. After a few rides, I did notice it was a little bit stiffer than I like, so I lowered it down to about 69 or 70. I'm running the high speed and low speed compression at one click from fully open. So thinking about running this fork on the really chunky, nasty stuff, it really uses its travel wisely. It's very supportive. It's almost like you'll hit a bump and it's waiting for the next huge bump, so you never feel like you're undergunned with this fork. It can really take a big beating. I did notice when you're going a little bit slower, maybe a little bit more mellow trails, I felt like it wasn't as supple on the little hits. But again, this fork really isn't made for that. It's made for hard charging and going real fast. So in those situations, it does eat up those bumps really well, and it keeps the ride relatively comfortable up front. So now for the Mezzer, again, I have this set to factory recommendations and I have not deviated from those for the IRT. running the recommended pressure as well as the main air pressure chamber, and I'm running 1 click of low speed and 1 click of high speed from fully open. So after riding the Zeb for a while and the 2 rides that I've had on the Mezzer Pro, I was just blown away, and it reminded me of how much I enjoyed it on our Nuke Proof Mega. This thing is super, super supple. On my first rides on the Mega, I thought that I'm blowing through travel, I'm gonna bottom this fork out. Well, it's funny that after I've hit those nasty lines and those big jumps, looking at what travel is left available was very similar to the Zeb, where I'm having about 1/3 to 3/4 of an inch even after hitting those big rocks and hits. So in the small bumps, it just eats up those things, man. I was going into these trails, I felt like I was just rocketing into them, and I think it is due to that small bump sensitivity, and it's just eating those hits up. I never felt it pack up. I never had any issue with it fading. This thing was just for the task, and it really was just in the mid stroke, was really supple, and I believe that's from the IRT, where you can adjust it to give you more support or make it more plush. This thing is just, to me, was amazing. I really enjoyed this fork. On the slower trails, I did instantly notice, comparing it to the Zeb, that it was eating those up. Didn't have the little bit of more feedback that I was getting from the Zeb. This thing just ate them up, and I mean, it was tight, man. Just wrapping up my experience with these 2 forks, if you're gonna hold me over the coals and tell me pick a fork right now for your bike, I'm gonna have to say I would take the Mezzer Pro. I just really appreciate that small bump sensitivity. The adjustments on it are very, very good. That IRT, being able to adjust the mid-stroke and the top out for me is really helpful. I don't have to mess with tokens or ramp control. I really just get an air shock pump and set it to where I like it. What you do lose in stiffness to the Zeb, I don't think is a big deterrent for me. I don't feel too much issue with flex at all in this fork, and the kicker for this fork is it's super versatile. So where the Zeb, I believe, can go from 160 to 180, the Mezzer Pro can go from 140 to 180, and you don't have to change the air spring. All you do is crack it open, put in some travel spacers, and you're ready to go. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to pull this Mezzer Pro off. We're going to put it on our Meta TR that's coming, so don't forget to stay tuned for that. And that bike is 150 millimeter travel, so we're going to be able to get that big, stiff, burly 37 millimeter stanchion fork on a trail bike, where normally you're stuck with a 34 from Fox or a Pike at 35 millimeters. So kicking it up a notch with this fork, so we're super excited about that. Not a takeaway from the Zeb. The Zeb, I think, is that fork. It is a purpose-built fork for hard enduro charging, downhill, racing. So if you're hitting laps at the bike park, or you're just a really aggressive rider, then I think you'll benefit from the Zeb. It's really, it is a good fork. That about wraps it up for our comparison of the Zeb and the Mezzer Pro. If you have any questions or feedback or comment, let us know below and we'll do our best to respond. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to follow us on all the social media platforms, especially Instagram, and now we're doing some crazy stuff on TikTok because people are actually starting to like it. And straightlinemtb.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe because we got a lot more great content coming for you guys, especially the Meta AM long-term review and our Meta TR first ride review. So see you on the next.